Hey, everybody. Oh gosh, I'm so excited for this week's guest. We have something in common. We went to the same college, but not at the same time, of course. But I have someone who I've been dying to introduce to this community. So, Mr. Dr. Napoleon, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, I am Napoleon Petsoulis. I am a clinical psychologist by training and organizational psychologist. I work in executive coaching and assessment, and I'm excited to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. So, all of you, my listeners, you're probably like, Francesca, why do you have a psychologist? Hey, guys, we thought about this. There is a crossover in what I do and what Napoleon gets to do in his practice. So, he works with organizations. In fact, you can't see this, but his second page of his bio showed a number of organizations that he's worked with. And it's all for you and making ourselves better as leaders within organizations. So we were in the green room just a few minutes ago. Napoleon and I were aligning what we want to present today. So Napoleon, we were talking about the intersection of dress and psychology, right?
Yep.
Let's share that with the audience. Let's unpack what we were thinking about and to help people become their best selves.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of overlap between how we present ourselves and how effective we are in our jobs, and especially as leaders. It's increasingly important that you present yourself in a positive light. And so I think that there's two pieces to that. I think one is how confident do you feel in what you're wearing, and you know how you show up on a day to day. It's that the dress is important for you as an individual, kind of psychologically, internally. And then the second piece is how you're presenting yourself externally, so that how people view you. If you're dressed poorly, if you're unkempt, you're not going to be perceived in the same way. And so I think both of those two pieces go hand in hand as we talk about dress and presenting yourself, and you know rising through the ranks as a leader.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. I know there's a couple of people laughing as they listen to this because it is about confidence in what you're wearing. I've touched on that topic. That's what this podcast is about, and I love how you bring that up because I will tell you we didn't rehearse that beforehand. So thank you for saying that. I'm clapping out loud because you really hit the nail on the head, right? It is important how we, because I feel, Napoleon, and correct me if I'm wrong, but do people dress on the outside how they feel on the inside? Is that a valid statement?
I think ideally, I don't know
Ideally.
that I don't know that everyone does that. I think
Okay.
ideally you would, but at the same time, pushing yourself to meet that standard. So dressing, um, to meet how you feel on the inside, and being
Mm-hmm.
comfortable completely presenting yourself how you see yourself.
Right, right. So, what are some things we can think about and we can share with the audience as people advance throughout organizations? Because you said you've done this work and this is
Mhm.
what you do, this is what you excel at. What are some things, some top ideas that we can share?
Yeah, I think with with COVID and everything being remote, one important thing is having the same standard at home as you are having at the office, or when you were in the office.
Hmm.
And I think we touched on this last week when me and you were chatting, but um, having a space dedicated to work, showering, putting nice clothes on, treating work as work, and that goes, it's in line with how you dress. So putting on a presentable shirt, and really preparing yourself for work, and setting that space aside to work. um,
Mm.
I think that's, to me, with the pandemic, that's got to be one of the most important things. Is like, I'm seeing people working from bed, or working um, at their kitchen table, or in all these different places, and not having a dedicated space, and not treating work as work, which maybe can work for some people, I think
Right.
it really does work for some, but that group is a minority.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with you on the space. It's a mindset. This is what we're saying, from showering to dressing, what you would wear to work. Okay, so maybe you don't wear shoes. That's okay. But from head to toe, to try and have that same presentation and create that work environment, and yes, create the boundaries with a room with a door, so you can have that quiet time that you need to produce, because ultimately that's what we're getting paid to do, right? We need to
Yeah.
produce for our employer. We're helping our employer solve problems for other people. So
Yeah.
that's just the definition of employment, right?
Yeah. I think it's more to do with, you know, the internal side of this than it is the external. Like the external, you might not be on video for your call. It's more
Mhm.
the internal side of this, of saying, I have respect for my work, I have respect for myself. And I think that self-confidence comes from that respect, of how you present and how you are treating your work.
That's right. Right. The self-respect leads to the confidence. It's just one beautiful circle. And that helps us get promoted and helps us separate ourselves from the other person in presenting ourselves on the outside and having confidence on the inside. Yeah, I agree. That's a
Yeah.
great, you're right. It's that mindset of, starting every day, like your work day, as if you had to leave your home. I don't know if I mentioned this to you. I may have, how I created a fake commute to get coffee in the morning. Did I tell you that story?
Yeah, yeah, you did.
Right? So that's, I've been working from home for a few years. So it was pre-pandemic. And it was just something, like you said, a structure that I created for that mindset that, okay, I would always pick up coffee on the way to the office when I was in
Hmm.
corporate. So I kind of created that here. Like, okay, I'm going to drive to this place, get coffee, and then I'm going to sit down at my desk just like I would, in the typical office environment, just to
Right.
create that mindset of, this is my day, I'm starting my day, and this is the best way for me to start my day.
Yeah,
So do you
those
have
those
any
little
ideas?
breaks. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really
right?
it's really important. Those little breaks, that it's those little gaps. It's like, I'm seeing a lot of people in my field talk about this, and I'm sure it's being studied. Those little gaps. So like your commute is your time to reflect or to think or to distance yourself from work. And we don't really have that. And so finding ways to create it, I think that's a beautiful, a beautiful way to do it, is creating a commute. And
Right,
it's sort of ironic now that people are having to, like, people complained about the commute 2 years
right,
ago, but
right.
it's important. Like these things are things we need.
We need them. Like you said, the separation where we can just think about a few things. And I often, I use it as a time to listen to other podcasts, but I also use it as a time to turn everything off. It just, depending on what is happening that day and what's on my mind, I just try to use it in my best interest. And I encourage other people. So we can take walks, right? It's not just getting in your car and taking off, maybe taking a walk around the corner, or just sitting outside for a few minutes, because guess what we need to replicate, Napoleon? We need to replicate that time when we could walk around the office and have conversations with it. I mean,
Right.
we would take breaks when we were in corporate, and we need to allow ourselves that gap, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it also ties into that second piece of how we're influencing, and those little moments that, you're building connections with people, you're showing what you have to offer outside of a group meeting on a Zoom call. And
Right.
so I think um, it's even more important now to find those opportunities to connect with people. And maybe you need to have a side phone call with somebody, or a side Zoom call, or um, you know, uh, going back, how you present yourself is then even more important in those
Right.
group calls. Um, I was on a call with an executive 2 days ago, and it was immediately apparent to me that this person was like a rock star. Like, how,
Mm,
as soon as she signed on to the Zoom, it's like she was dressed professionally, she was talking confidently, she was assertive, she was everything was like perfect on the screen. And it
right.
just it immediately like put me, I was like, taken back. I was like, wow, this lady is like,
She's on.
she's on, and she commands the meeting. And it was cool to see, just to the point where we're talking about.
I agree, right? So it's our personality. We can still show it. And it's just obviously she was mindful, I'm sure, of her background, her camera and her microphone, like all of these little details are critically important for our communication. Direct eye contact, which sometimes may get confusing when we're on a Zoom. So practice it, like where are you supposed to look on the screen, right? So yeah, obviously this woman had it, and it was surprising to you because I don't know, have we been afraid? Because a lot of people might not like the image of themselves. And I think maybe that's why they've held back. If I were to take a guess, some people like selfies, some people don't like selfies.
Right.
And it's kind of like we were forced to go on camera.
Yeah.
Right. With the pandemic. So this is an element we didn't get a chance to rehearse or practice or get used to.
Yeah. I think this is, I don't know, maybe you've talked about this previously, but a very interesting like little tidbit that I read in an article was about, they're starting to do studies on where you look on these meetings, and most people look at themselves. So essentially you're sitting at a meeting and you're staring at yourself. It's like you're
Right.
talking to a mirror.
Right.
And because we're drawn to see what our image is like, and psychologically that's problematic, because of course you're going to just notice every imperfection. And so what I've seen and what I've recommended to people is to turn your video off, so it's more like a one-on-one interaction.
Right.
Because otherwise your eyes are naturally drawn to staring at yourself, which is not a good idea.
That's a great point. And no, thank you for mentioning that. We haven't brought it up. I haven't brought it up in previous episodes. So this is star content as far as I'm concerned, because and I love that there's being research done behind it, because it's just a whole different element that has surfaced that we really haven't talked about in getting acclimated to the picture of yourself and talking to yourself, like you said, talking to the mirror. Well, that's pretty awesome. Anything else, if we could offer one more tidbit of assistance and support for those, climbing the corporate ladder?
Yeah, I think it's really just being mindful of how you're presenting yourself in every interaction that you come into. That those little moments are very important. And so, in line with this podcast, dressing well is I would just strongly encourage people to be mindful about how are they dressing, how are they speaking, what are those little moments that they can improve, because it does matter. And so, like,
Yep.
I mentioned that executive that I spoke with, it was very apparent. And me as a psychologist and an assessor, so I'm assessing people's abilities to be a leader, it is important.
Yep.
I'm not critiquing someone's dress, because I'm the last person to do that, definitely. But what I am sort of assessing is, how does this person, how do they command the room? What are those leadership characteristics that are showing through when that person gets up and starts talking? And so that's one piece that I would emphasize to people, is to be mindful of that.
Thank you. Well, mindset, mindfulness, all of these things are so important in these elements. But so we're talking about clothes and dressing well in the intersection. So then, at the very end of our time, I always ask a magical question. Are you ready? Are you ready for the magical question that wraps up our
I'm ready.
episode?
Yeah.
So from your perspective, what is your favorite piece of clothing or accessory of all time?
Oh,
And
no.
how does it make you feel?
So anyone that knows me knows that my answer to this is going to be my Crocs, which is
Crocs, those rubber
the,
shoes.
the rubber shoes, which is a ridiculous answer considering this this podcast, but in all seriousness, I love my Crocs. I've been through 2 pairs now, and they make me feel comfortable. I love them as shoes. I wear them around the house, but obviously not not appropriate for work.
You know what? They make you giddy. You're smiling. Like, I don't share the video portion of this, but trust me when I tell you, everyone who's listening, there's a smile from ear to ear. So your answer is perfect. It's perfect because it's you and it's making you happy. So that's why I asked the question, just to share a little bit of you as a presenter. But thank you so much for your time. If someone wanted to continue the conversation with you, and just find out a little bit more about what you do, where's the best place for them to reach you?
Yeah, the best place is honestly LinkedIn. You can just
Okay.
search my name. There's not too many Napoleons out there. So LinkedIn is definitely the best place to connect with me. And I'm always open to having conversations. And yeah.
Thank you. Well, I will certainly share the link in the show notes. So all that anyone has to do is just tap and it'll bring you to your profile. But thank you so much for your time. And I loved our conversation today because it really ties in a lot of pieces in my message of my service and what I deliver. So I appreciate you tying those pieces together and how important it is to dress well and feel great. So I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I appreciated the conversation. Thanks so much.
Okay.